And because of that, successful leaders have to stay curious, agile, purpose-driven. Resilient leadership, in my opinion, is the art of navigating uncertainty with clarity and purpose. So it's not about being unshakable. It's not about being rigid and not wanting to change. It's actually quite the contrary. It's about being flexible, being adaptable. So a resilient leader combines strategic vision with emotional intelligence. And he or she is able to use both data and empathy to make decisions that inspire confidence in a world where 63% of your top employees want to actually work for companies whose values they share. It just makes sense for you to be sustainable and to understand that the only criteria can no longer be short-term profit. That profit and profitability will always be the most important indicator, but it's no longer the only indicator. We now have to understand that it is also important to think about people and not just profit. And by people, I mean our employees, our shareholders, and society as a whole, whether it's our clients, our customers, or the people we work with. So people become extremely important. And then also think about planet, right? It is the only ecosystem where we're able to uh, do what we do as a company. So we have to think about those three P's, if you will: people, profit, and planet, and understand that is what actually makes a difference. It allows you to build trust, also build agility, and at the same time share purposes. These are very uncertain times. And I think that despite the current geopolitical landscape, which is quite uncertain, we are witnessing an extraordinary rise in bottom-up collaboration. The climate movement around the world is no longer led exclusively by governments. That's actually one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic about this green revolution. I think it's being driven by cities, corporations, universities, multilateral entities, and above all, civil society. Technology and digital connectivity have now become extremely powerful tools to mobilize action and build alliances that are able to actually even transcend borders. So that's all extremely important, because we now see global coalitions of businesses setting voluntary standards that go beyond regulation, partnerships between cities and provinces, even groups that are actually sharing clean energy solutions and opening up their technologies to be shared freely by others. Investors are coming together around common sustainability goals. And so, yes, this is a very uncertain, polarized world. We are now, I think, witnessing what I think is the rebirth of a new Cold War, where two superpowers, in this case, China and the United States, are fighting for economic supremacy. And yes, the world is polarized, but I'm also optimistic about the fact that while polarization does persist, the climate crisis is actually forcing us all to come together and to cooperate in new ways. So that, to me, is what's actually positive about this movement. Countries and companies that understand this are turning sustainability into a competitive advantage. And that's something we should all be happy about. first step is actually accepting that disruption is the new normal. In this rapidly changing world, leadership is no longer about control, it's about direction. And because of that, successful leaders have to stay curious, agile, purpose driven. They have to foster cultures that reward innovation, entrepreneurship within their own companies, rather than trying to achieve perfection. That I think it's not the goal. They must invest in continuous learning, developing a culture where people are intellectually challenged every day and they find purpose. We must invest in empowering multidisciplinary teams, which I think is important. Different thinking. We have to communicate a vision that remains steady. We know where we want to go. We know where we want to be. We're going to find challenges along the way. We're going to have to shift routes, and we might have to take a few steps back, but we know where we want to be, and that's a valuable compass, and that's why sustainability becomes so extremely important. It keeps people motivated, but also aligned with everything else, especially when everything else seems so uncertain. So leading through disruption is ultimately about mindset. It's ultimately viewing uncertainty not as a threat, but as an opportunity and even an invitation to reinvent ourselves and our organizations so that they can become more agile and ready for change. The arrival of Donald Trump to the White House has made a difference in the United States in terms of the speed at which the green transition was actually taking place. There's no doubt about it. However, I remain extremely optimistic about the direction of the United States when it comes to this green revolution or green transition for a number of reasons. Number one, because the transition to a low emissions economy in the United States is actually being led by the private sector and not the public sector, right? When you see which are the companies that are investing the most around the world, they're all, or mostly, when you look at the top 10 companies, 6 of them are American multinationals, from Google to Meta to Amazon and so on. So companies realize that it makes economic sense for them to be green, to reduce costs, to give clients and customers what they want and what they expect, to give them sustainable solutions, because that's what the market wants, right? So again, this revolution in the United States is being led by the private sector. Two, because when you actually look at the political landscape in the United States, President Biden invested the largest amount of public funds in the history of the United States over the course of his 4-year presidency. It was called the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was basically an excuse for the United States to transition to a low emissions green economy. When you look at the numbers, it's actually quite surprising to see that approximately 62% of the green jobs that are going to be generated in the United States in the next 10 years will be generated in Republican states. And almost 70% of the grants and federal subsidies to the states will be given to Republican states. So it's going to be very difficult for Donald Trump to go to his own Republican governors and say, hey, you know what, give me the money back, or the commitment that the federal government made. He'll probably choose a path of less resistance. And so I think that's something important, because politically speaking, it's not going to be that easy. Now, having said that, the government is not going to invest a single additional penny in the next 3 years. Let's be clear. Finally, I'm very optimistic because there is a huge social demand in the United States. According to the last CNN poll, 72% of American citizens want the federal government to actually do more to combat climate change, more, not less, right? So most people, regardless of where they live in the United States, want the United States to do more and to lead the way. All of that together leads me to the conclusion that this transition is an issue of speed, but not direction. The world will be a low emissions world, and our economy, because of that, will be a more competitive green economy. I love speaking to audiences because I am absolutely certain that these are not just disruptive times in history where everything is changing and nothing will ever be the same. I want people to walk away with a sense of possibility and empowerment. I wanted to see sustainability not as a limitation, not as a regulatory imposition or something they have got to do because the government says they have to do. I want them to understand that this is the greatest economic and business opportunity of our time, which is also the right thing to do from a moral and ethical standpoint. When I speak to audiences, my goal is to actually connect reason with emotion, to show that this shift towards a low carbon economy is not only necessary, but it's also exciting, it's also profitable, it makes you more competitive. I want every business leader, every employee, and every person within a company to understand that whether they lead a business, a classroom, or a community group, that they do have agency. That change begins with your choices, your voice, and your leadership. I think the future is not something that happens to us. It's something that we build together, one decision, one innovation, but also one courageous act at a time. So I want to make sure that they understand that this is a historic moment and that it's up to us to make a difference.